Everyone was watching the bride, but the billionaire couldn't look away from her asterisk. The camera clicked rapidly as Zara captured the bride's radiant smile. Through her lens, she watched pure joy unfold at the riverside ceremony. Golden hour light painted everything magical, and she felt that familiar rush of documenting love in its purest form. Just a few more shots, she whispered to herself, adjusting her position near the rose-covered archway. The bride and groom were lost in their own world. Zara wanted to preserve every precious second. But as she stepped backward to get the perfect wide shot, disaster struck. Her heel caught on something solid, sending her tumbling with an undignified yelp. Her expensive camera went flying and she braced for the worst. Instead of hitting the ground, strong arms caught her mid-fall. She found herself pressed against a firm chest, breathing in the scent of cedar and something indefinably masculine. Her heart hammered as she looked up into the most striking dark eyes she'd ever seen. "Careful there," a deep voice rumbled above her. The man steadying her had olive skin, perfectly tousled black hair, and wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent. "Are you hurt?" "Only my pride," Zara managed, acutely aware that his hands were still on her waist. She felt heat creep up her neck as other guests turned to stare, and possibly my camera. He glanced down at her expensive equipment lying in the grass, then back at her with what might have been amusement. "Professional photographer? Wedding photographer?" she corrected, finally stepping back on steady feet, though apparently not a very graceful one. Grace is overrated. His mouth quirked up at one corner. "I'm Dante Zara." She bent to retrieve her camera, relieved to find it unharmed. When she straightened, Dante was studying her with an intensity that made her pulse skip. "Friend of the bride or groom?" he asked. "Neither. I'm working." She gestured toward the happy couple, who were now posing for family photos. "What about you? Business associate of the groom?" Something in his tone suggested he'd rather be anywhere else, though I have to admit the entertainment value just improved considerably. Despite herself, Zara felt her lips twitch. "Glad my clumsiness could brighten your evening." It did more than that. The way he said it, low and almost private, sent warmth spreading through her chest. The wedding coordinator's voice cut through their moment. "Zara, we need the cake-cutting shots now. Duty calls," she said reluctantly, already missing their conversation. "Find you later," Dante promised. And something in his voice made her believe he would, as Zara hurried toward the reception area. She couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully ordered world had just been beautifully disrupted. The reception was in full swing when Zara finally allowed herself a break. She'd captured the cake cutting, the first dance, and enough candid moments to make any couple happy. Now she stood at the edge of the dance floor, reviewing shots on her camera's display. The photographer takes a breather, that familiar voice said beside her. She looked up to find Dante approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. He'd loosened his tie slightly, and somehow that small detail made him even more attractive. "You've been watching me work?" she asked, accepting the champagne. "Gratefully, hard not to. You move like you're dancing with the light itself." He studied her face as she took a sip. "It's mesmerizing." Zara felt her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to such direct appreciation. "It's quite a line, Dante, not a line, an observation." He gestured toward the couple swaying to the soft jazz. "Dance with me? I should be working, ... One dance." The bride and groom looked thoroughly occupied. She glanced over to see the newlyweds lost in each other's eyes, oblivious to everything else. Before she could overthink it, she set down her camera and took Dante's offered hand. The moment they stepped onto the dance floor, everything else faded away. Dante's hand settled on her lower back, warm and sure, while his other hand engulfed hers completely. They moved together naturally, as if they'd done this 100 times before. "You're full of surprises," Zara murmured as he spun. Her gently mysterious business associate who dances like a professional. "I contain multitudes," he said against her ear, his breath sending shivers down her spine. "What about you?" "What does Zara do when she's not capturing other people's happiness?" "I paint badly." She laughed softly. "I read romance novels and eat too much ice cream. I'm terribly ordinary." "Nothing about you is ordinary." His thumb traced across her knuckles. The way you see the world through that camera, it's like you're collecting moments of magic. Their bodies had somehow moved closer during the slow song. Zara could feel the solid warmth of his chest, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "What do you do, really?" she asked. "Don't say business associate." A shadow crossed his features. "I solve problems. Big ones. Sometimes that means making difficult decisions that affect a lot of people. Sounds lonely, it is." The admission seemed to surprise him, until tonight. The song ended, but neither of them moved apart. The spell was broken when someone bumped into them, laughing loudly. "I need some air," Dante said quietly. "Walk with me." They found themselves on the hotel's garden terrace, string lights twinkling overhead like fallen stars. The night air was cool and sweet with jasmine. "This is better," Zara said, leaning against the stone railing. "I love photographing weddings, but sometimes the crowd gets overwhelming." "Is that why you chose to capture moments instead of living in them?" The question was gentle, but perceptive. Maybe she admitted, "It's safer behind the camera." "Safe is overrated too." He moved closer, his hand covering hers on the railing. "Sometimes the best things happen when you step out from behind the lens." Looking up at him, bathed in starlight and possibility, Zara thought he might be right. Dante Rossini. Zara stared at her phone screen in disbelief. She'd Googled him during a quiet moment, and now she understood the expensive suit. The confidence, the way people seemed to orbit around him at the reception. Tech billionaire. "You of Rossini Industries?" Known for his reclusive nature and brilliant mind, having second thoughts, his voice startled her. She hadn't heard him approach the garden bench where she sat. "You could have mentioned you're basically a mogul," she said, standing to face him. "Would it have changed anything?" "I don't know, maybe." She tucked her phone away. "I'm just a small-town photographer who moved to the city with big dreams." "We're from different worlds, are we?" He stepped closer, his eyes intense in the moonlight. "Because when I'm with you, I forget about board meetings and stock prices. I remember what it feels like to just ... be." They'd escaped the reception an hour ago, wandering through the hotel's private gardens. The celebration continued in the distance, but here among the roses and fountains, they existed in their own bubble. "Don't tell me." "Something real," Zara said. "Something that doesn't come up in Google searches." Dante was quiet for a long moment, then sat on the bench, patting the space beside him. "I haven't dated anyone in 3 years. By choice? By necessity? Every relationship became about what I could provide, not who I was." He ran a hand through his hair. "After a while, it was easier to just ... stop trying." Zara settled beside him, their thighs touching. "That sounds incredibly lonely." It was, as he turned to study her profile. "What about you?" "Real things. I moved here after my fiancé cheated with my best friend." The words came easier in the darkness. "Spent 2 years convinced love was just pretty packaging around inevitable disappointment. And now I'm sitting in a garden at midnight with a stranger who makes me want to believe in magic again." She met his gaze, which is either wonderful or terrifying. "Both," he agreed softly. "Both?" "Definitely both." The fountain bubbled nearby, and night-blooming jasmine perfumed the air. Zara felt like she was living in one of her romance novels, except this was real. This was happening to her. "I have a confession," Dante said. "I'd been thinking about kissing you since the moment you crashed into me." Her breath caught. "Quite a confession. I have another one." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "I'm falling for a woman whose last name I don't even know." "Chen," she whispered. "Zara Chen. Beautiful." He lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "Everything about you is beautiful." The tenderness in his voice undid her. Completely. When he cupped her face with his free hand, she leaned into his touch. ... "Tell me to stop," he murmured, his thumb tracing her bottom lip. "Tell me this is crazy. This is crazy," she breathed. "Don't stop." When his lips finally met hers, it was nothing like the gentle first kiss she'd expected. It was desperate, hungry, full of weeks' worth of longing compressed into a single moment. Her hands fisted in his shirt as he deepened the kiss, and she tasted champagne and promise in the beginning of something that would change everything. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Zara rested her forehead against his. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now," he said, pressing another soft kiss to her lips, "we find out if midnight magic survives the sunrise." Zara's phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand. She reached for it without opening her eyes, not wanting to break the spell of waking up in Dante's arms. 3 missed calls from her business partner. 7 text messages. Her heart sank as she read them. "Bad news?" Dante's voice was rough with sleep. His arm tightened around her waist. "My biggest client just pulled their contract." She sat up, the hotel sheet clutched to her chest. "The Morrison. Wedding next month. They found someone cheaper. How much did you lose?" The gentleness in his voice made it easier to admit. "Enough that I might have to close the studio." Dante was quiet, his hand stroking her bare shoulder. "Then I could help." "No." She turned to face him, seeing the hurt flash across his features. "I mean, thank you, but no. This is exactly what I was afraid of." "Afraid of what?" "This?" It gestured between them. "You solving my problems with money, me becoming another project for you to fix." He sat up, running both hands through his hair. "That's not what this is, isn't it?" She climbed out of bed, gathering her scattered clothes. "You're used to fixing things, Dante. It's what you do, but I'm not broken. I never said you were." His voice carried an edge now. "I'm trying to help someone I care about. Someone you've known for 12 hours. The words hung between them like a challenge. Dante's phone started ringing from his jacket pocket, and he ignored it. "You're scared," he said finally. "We both are. But running away won't change what happened. Between us." Zara paused in buttoning her dress. "What did happen between us, really? We got caught up in wedding magic and romance and champagne. But this is real life, Dante. In real life, billionaires don't fall for struggling photographers." "In real life," he said, standing and moving toward her, "2 people found something worth fighting for." His phone rang again. This time he answered. His tone sharp. "This better be an emergency, Marcus." Zara could hear the urgent voice on the other end, catching words like merger and crisis and need you here now. "I'll be there in an hour." Dante hung up, his jaw tight. "I have to go. There's a situation with the Tokyo acquisition." "Of course there is." She finished dressing, her movements mechanical. "The real world is calling." "Zara, wait." He caught her hand as she headed for the door. "This conversation isn't over." "Yes, it is." She pulled free gently. "Thank you for last night. It was ... magical, but magic doesn't pay rent or save businesses." She left him standing there in his expensive hotel room. He's probably already calculating how to fix her problems, whether she wanted him to or not. 3 weeks later, Zara was packing up her studio when the flowers arrived. 24 white roses with a simple card, "Magic is worth fighting for. D." Her hands shook as she read it. She'd thrown herself into work, taking any job she could find, trying to forget the way Dante had looked at her in the garden. Trying to forget how right it had. Felt to fall asleep in his arms. The second delivery came an hour later. An envelope containing a check for exactly the amount she'd lost when the Morrison wedding was canceled. The memo line read, "Loan to be repaid when convenient." Zara stared at the check for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and dialed. "His number, Zara?" he answered on the first ring, his voice breathless with hope. "We need to talk." 1 year later, Zara adjusted her veil for the 100th time, her hands trembling slightly. Through the bridal suite window, she could see guests taking their seats in the same garden where she and Dante had shared their first kiss. "Stop fidgeting," her maid of honor commanded. "You look absolutely stunning." Zara smiled at her reflection. The ivory silk gown was simple but elegant, chosen for the way it made her feel like herself rather than a princess costume. Her studio was thriving now, busier than ever after she'd accepted Dante's loan and paid it back in full 6 months later. "Ready?" her father asked, appearing in the doorway in his best suit. "More than ready." The music began as they walked toward the altar. Zara's breath caught when she saw Dante waiting for her, devastatingly handsome in his midnight blue suit. But it was the expression on his face that made her heart race. Pure, overwhelming love. The ceremony passed in a blur of vows and rings and happy tears. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Dante's kiss was tender and full of promise. "Mrs. Rossini," he murmured against her lips. "I like the sound of that," she whispered back. The reception was everything they'd dreamed of. Intimate, joyful, surrounded by people who truly mattered to them. As the evening wound down, Zara found herself on the same garden bench where they'd shared their midnight confessions. "Penny for your thoughts," Dante said, settling beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Just thinking about how different this is from last year." She leaned into his warmth. "Remember how terrified we were?" "You were terrified," he corrected. "I was determined. You were terrified too. Don't lie to your wife." "My wife," I said. It like he was testing the words. I love how that sounds. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their guests dance under the string lights. It had taken months of careful navigation to build their relationship on solid ground. Learning to trust, to communicate, to balance their different worlds, without losing themselves. "There's something I need to tell you," Zara said suddenly. Dante tensed slightly. "What is it?" She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We're going to need a bigger apartment." The champagne glass slipped from his other hand as understanding dawned. "Are you serious? 3 months?" "I found out yesterday." She bit her lip nervously. "I know we said we'd wait, Zara." His voice was rough with emotion. "This is the best wedding gift you could have given me." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, until someone wolf-whistled from the dance floor. "Love you," he said against her forehead. "So much it scares me sometimes." Good scared or bad scared? The best kind of scared. The kind that means you have something worth protecting. As they rejoined their wedding reception, Zara caught sight of their photographer capturing candid moments of other guests. She recognized the hungry, artistic look in the young woman's eyes. The same look she'd had a year ago when love was something that happened to other people. "Think she'd find her own wedding story here?" Dante asked, following her gaze. "I hope so." Zara smiled, remembering how one collision had changed everything. Everyone deserves to crash into their soulmate at least once. Literally, in your case. "Hey," she swatted his arm playfully. "That was an accident. It's the best accident of my life," he said, spinning her onto the dance floor as their song began to play. Under the stars and string lights, surrounded by love and laughter, Zara knew that some magic was real enough to last forever.